You probably look forward to weekends, that moment when Friday evening arrives and something inside you finally relaxes. But here's a strange question. Did ancient humans need weekends? At first, the answer seems obvious. Of course not. Weekends are modern. Ancient humans didn't have offices, calendars, or bosses asking them to submit reports by Monday morning. But the more you think about it, the stranger the question becomes. Because weekends are not just days on a calendar. They exist for a reason. And that reason might reveal something uncomfortable about how humans live today. For almost all of human history, people lived as hunter-gatherers. No cities, no factories, no Monday, no Saturday, no official work week. Life followed something older than schedules. Nature. If food was nearby, people gathered it. If animals moved, hunters followed. If storms came, plans changed. There was work, of course. Sometimes difficult work. Hunting could fail. Weather could be brutal. Survival was never guaranteed. Ancient life was not peaceful paradise. This is where many people get history wrong. When we imagine ancient humans, we often picture two extremes, either endless suffering or effortless freedom. The truth was probably somewhere in between. Their lives were harsh in ways we can barely imagine, but they were also structured differently from ours. Because hunter-gatherers didn't usually divide life into neat boxes called work and personal life. The hunt was life. Gathering was life. Making tools, caring for children, moving camp, telling stories around fire, all of it belonged to the same world. There was effort, there was exhaustion, but there wasn't necessarily the same feeling of clocking into a separate existence. And surprisingly, some anthropologists have suggested that certain hunter-gatherer groups may have spent fewer hours in food gathering and survival activities than many modern workers spend in formal jobs today. Not because life was easy, but because survival followed rhythms rather than rigid schedules. And those rhythms mattered. Imagine waking without alarms, not because life is comfortable, but because the day begins when the world around you begins. Some days demanded intense effort. Others allowed rest. Sometimes there was abundance. Sometimes scarcity. The pace changed. And maybe that's the key. Ancient humans had hard lives, but they may not have had repetitive, scheduled lives in the way we understand them. Then something changed. Around 12,000 years ago, humans began settling. Agriculture appeared. And with it came one of the biggest transformations in human history. Farming sounds peaceful from a distance. Fields, villages, stability. But farming changed the relationship between humans and time itself. Hunter-gatherers adapted to nature. Farmers had to organize it. Fields had to be planted at the right moment, water managed, animals maintained, harvests protected. Mistakes carried consequences. And unlike hunting, agriculture often required repetitive labor tied to seasons and routines. Life became more predictable, but also more demanding in new ways. For the first time, large populations could remain in one place. Villages became towns. Towns became cities. And gradually, work became more organized, more divided, more scheduled. As civilizations expanded, so did systems of labor. Ancient kingdoms needed builders. Empires needed farmers. States needed taxes. And somewhere along this long timeline, time itself became regulated. Religions introduced sacred rest days. Different cultures created different rhythms of labor and pause. The idea that certain days belonged to rest was slowly taking shape. But the modern weekend still didn't exist. That came much later. During the Industrial Revolution, work changed again. And this change may have been the most dramatic of all. Factories didn't care about natural rhythms. Machines ran on schedules. People adapted to clocks. Hours became measurable. Productivity became measurable. And for millions of workers, life became increasingly divided into two worlds: the hours you belong to work and the hours you belong to yourself. Long factory shifts could stretch brutally. 6-day work weeks were common. For many workers, rest was not luxury, it was necessity. And eventually, after labor movements, negotiations, and social change, the modern weekend emerged, not as random tradition, but as relief. This is why the question becomes so interesting. Did ancient humans have weekends? No. But maybe that's not the real question. Because ancient humans also didn't have commutes, performance reviews, shift rotations, unread emails waiting in their pockets. They faced dangers we rarely face, yet they lived inside a different relationship with time. And that doesn't mean modern life is worse. We live longer, safer, with medicine, technology, and opportunities ancient people could never imagine. This is not a story about romanticizing caves or rejecting civilization. Ancient humans suffered. Modern humans suffer too, just differently. But maybe somewhere along the way, human life became divided into categories our ancestors barely recognized: work, life, escape, recovery. And perhaps that division explains why weekends feel so important. Because when Friday arrives, many people don't simply celebrate free time. They feel release. And maybe that's the strange truth hidden inside this question. Ancient humans probably didn't need weekends. Not because life was easier, not because survival was simple, but because their lives may not have been structured in a way that made escape feel necessary. Maybe ancient humans didn't need weekends because life wasn't something they needed to escape from. Thank you for watching Vinta.